the path you're on in life, I want you to think about you're starting and you're going somewhere. But just I want you to stop and look back at the path from where you've come. All of the things that have gotten you to this point have been decisions you've made, whether it's been conscious or unconscious. That's what we're going to talk about. You're listening to the Bear in Mind Podcast, episode 172.
A podcast that breaks it down so you can break the cycle for good. Now, your host, Tara Rama, but you can call her T.
I'm going to tell you that a lot of things on the path that I've been on, I've made decisions that have been very unconscious. And there are things in me today, I would say, that when I look back at the path that has gotten me here to this moment, and I look at the decisions, I can see how unconscious I was of it and how I would have maybe made different choices. And I was very much living an unconscious life. I was going through motions, and it's really weird. If you look at your life and you look at the things even around you and the people that you're with, some of it you may actually think almost like you didn't have a choice, but that choice you did make, you weren't aware of it. If you're married, you made that choice that maybe seems like a bigger decision, but even the lamp that's sitting next to you or the sofa you're sitting on or the place you live in, the apartment, you may think that the apartment that you're in was because of how the market is, and it's still choices we make. We can wait for another apartment to become available. We can temporarily go somewhere else. We fail to see some of those options. And so today's episode is about from where you're at today and the path that you're going to continue is to become more aware of some of the choices that you make, even the ones that you make unconsciously. So even realizing the stuff that you have in your home and people that you're with, the job that you have, the family that you interact with, all of those things were decisions you made and maybe weren't always aware of it, of making that decision and not looking at other options at that time. Because I hear a lot, I've had no choice to do this. And that's not really true, especially if you're living in a safe environment where you're not in survival mode. And there are a lot of options that we don't always look at. So when you're on this path, so we're going to be talking about the future. We're not going to look at the past, but just understanding that some of the choices from our path, maybe we look at it with regret, were probably made not very consciously. And so when you're walking down this path, and we're kind of continuing the analogy of the mud from the previous episode, there are things that maybe today that we're not exactly aware of. And just to bring a little bit of awareness to you it helps almost kind of shift your brain a little bit automatically when you can all of a sudden see some things, like turning on the light and you're like, there's that thing I was looking for. So look at the most recent thing that you purchased. And you can see that maybe it was an impulse buy, something when you were going to the cashier, it was along the way. Maybe even something was giving something to you for free in the store. And today, because I'm now conscious of just taking that free thing, I say no because I don't want that stuff in my house. And then because then it'll end up in the bin after that. And then there's things that sometimes we don't notice that we're doing that are consuming our time. When we go on social media, when we go on the internet to look up something, all of those things that we are doing throughout our day, we're unconsciously making those decisions. I unconsciously, if I'm not focused on something, will pick up my phone and go on social media. And so on this path, we kind of have this place that we want to get to. And then what comes up are those, what I call distractions. It's like the free gift at the store. It's the telephone with the social media connected to the internet to go look up stuff. those are all things that get us off of where we want to be. And sometimes that's okay. It's all okay. It's not bad to go on social media. It's not bad to take the free stuff. It's if we're doing it consciously. I want to be here spending my time. I want to have this free gift because for whatever reason, it could be to use it to give to somebody else. And the time that we often become more aware and get kind of a prompt in our life, well, for example, listening to this podcast is a prompt, but also probably a really prompt that's thrown in your face is when you end up with a result that you were like, oh, I didn't realize that happened. It could be as simple as gaining 5 kilos. All of a sudden you're like, where did the 5 kilos come from? From consciously deciding what we're eating or how the movements throughout our day, or for other reasons. And then a result that we get, and then that prompts us to evaluate some of the decisions we make in our life. And then that often leads to looking at the past and then going into a whole bunch of regret. And that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about here today, looking at those choices that you're making in the moment right now. And this is one of the things I am working on currently in my life. I feel like I've done some time management. I understand how to work it. And then I realized that there are things that I'm unconsciously still doing throughout my day. And it's almost like I am following the path. So I call this the path you follow, but really I want to shift it more to the path that I'm creating for myself. And that involves looking at the choices that I'm making in a day, in a week's time, in a month's time. But it's kind of easier to see what you're doing right now today is deciding who you want to spend time with, where you spend your time, deciding what you're consuming. That could be social media, it can be podcasts, it could be books, what you're taking in and what you're consuming. Some of those things we don't realize can influence us on a bigger scale. And then it almost is like we're following somebody else's path. And then if we go too much off this path, we end up with some result. Maybe it could be, as an example, weight gain's a great example. It could be maybe overspending on something that we didn't plan on. All of a sudden our bank account has less cash in it. It could also be running out of time to complete a project. And we think, oh, well, if I've only had more time. I know that was kind of my mentality, and really looking at some of those things that come up, and then all of a sudden you're at a result. You didn't get something done. You didn't get something you wanted. And then that prompts you. And then what we do is that we don't sit and just go, what are some of the decisions I'm making throughout the day? And how can I become more aware or conscious of the things that I'm doing? So back to this nice path. So you have this path of where you want to get to. And instead of a path of you following it, you're going to create that path. And when you create a path, in our minds, we often think that we're just going to put this smooth sailing road, no bumps, no muddy patches, all of that. And we know that from experience, that is not how the path goes. But what we can do is create how we're going to get through that path that's going to be muddy, the path that's going to have the tree log and we have to get over it, the path that maybe hasn't been cut away, the leaves haven't been cut away, the branches, you have to actually clear it yourself and work a little bit to get through this. And then we're still creating it. And on the side of that path, there's going to be all of these decisions that are coming at us. It's like baiting us. You can also use the jungle example. I think I've talked about that before, where you come and then it's like a snake hissing at you. And it could be your telephone, the beep of your phone saying you have a message. And you pick it up and then all of a sudden you're on social media for 20 minutes. Not that I'm saying that doesn't happen to me. It totally does. And when you think about that path, then you think about all this bait. What is that bait in your day? And it's okay to take the bait if that's what we want to do. Because sometimes, let's say you do need to clear some of those tree branches in the way, and it's really a lot of work. you take the bait and you go relax. You're doing it consciously. You're scheduling in your me time. You're scheduling in your free time. But as long as we can recognize that the path that we're creating, that bait is taking us away from it, and we're consciously doing it, and then we come back to it, and then we go about cutting through the branches, and we continue to create that path. And then I want to leave you with one last thing, because I realize that some of this information is probably not something new. It's just another way of bringing it to your awareness. The last thing that I want to leave you with is when you get that bait, collectively look at that bait, because some of it is you do want to take that break. You do want to check out what's going on with your friends on social media. You do want to take it. Notice the quality of that bait. Notice if it's bait that's always negative. Is it the friend that's constantly being negative about everything, from the weather to the friends to the event they went to last night to how the airport lost their luggage? Everything is a problem. And I've been there, and I noticed that the quality of the bait, because sometimes you do want that free thing. And is it the quality of that item? And looking at it for, is it going to help somehow enrich your life? Is it something that is going to take you more down a path of negativity or more down a path of where you want to go? Because I'm not saying it needs to always be positive. But I used to notice that a lot of the bait, because it's kind of like clickbait, a lot of times on the internet, the articles that get the most clicked on are the ones not about 10 ways to be a better parent. It's 10 ways you're doing it wrong. That's the article that's going to get clicked on. It's often the negativity, the negative slant on that's going to get the attention. And just to notice the quality of that bait as you go down your path, as you create that path, and you pay attention to some of this bait, what's that quality doing for you? That's all I have for you this week. I'll check back with you next.
Thanks for listening. Listen for a new episode next Tuesday by subscribing on your favorite podcast platform. Bye for now.